Thank you very much. So if we could please now join Vicky in the readings for today.
So Gyeong, Book 7, Earthly Life in the Spirit World, Chapter 1, the Nature of Life and Death, Section 2, the dual structure of human beings. 2. In the relationship between our spirit and body, the spirit is the more important. The physical body continues for about 100 years and then it dies. But the spirit lives eternally, transcending time and space. Regardless of how well people dress and how luxuriously they live on earth, in the end everyone dies. Accordingly, before passing to the spirit world, we need to successfully harmonize the spiritual and physical standards and achieve, through our lifestyle, a perfect union of spirit and the flesh. That is, during our life in a limited earthly world, we have the responsibility to perfect our spirit with our body. There's more. 3. Each of us have a spiritual self and physical self. In the Unification Church, we refer to these as the spirit and the body. Originally, the spirit and the body are supposed to become one. Ultimately, they have to become one. And at what place do they become one? At a place of resonance. This is like the vibration of a tuning fork. When you strike one prong, it produces a tone that resonates perfectly with the other. Like a tuning fork, our spirit and body also achieve unity through resonance. One more. Okay. 4. When do the spirit self and the physical body become one? This is the question. When God's love comes into our heart, our body automatically actively reacts. It is not God's wisdom, ability, or power, but only His love that can bring us into a realm where our body and mind resonate in complete unity. What is the one focus, the ideal standard, desired by your five physical sensory organs, such as your eyes and nose, as well as your 5 spiritual sensory organs? It is neither God's power nor His wisdom. It is His love, the center and standard point of everything.
Okay, so for today's sermon, the title is What Are Vitality Elements? And it will be given by James Powell, so if you could welcome him up.
Okay, thanks. This is What Are Vitality Elements? I've been thinking about this for a few years now. It's just been an ongoing study of mine. I know we have this education through the principle, but it's clear from the principle that they are physiological. There's a physiological phenomena. So I thought, it should be something measurable, going on. But I just wanted to start first with, it's my first Sunday service in a while, and so it's kind of nice giving it as well. I've been working recently, and last time I was supposed to give this sermon, I was busy working, so I couldn't. But then this week, just gone, a guy in work came and asked me if I wanted to swap my Sunday with his Wednesday. For working, right? So, and then I said okay, and then Eli asked me if I wanted to give a sermon this week, so it just fitted really brilliantly. And I just wanted to share a story from when I was younger that kind of inspired me to get into this as well, once I read the principle about vitality elements. And when I was around 10, with my younger brother, we were being a bit naughty, being a bit rude to some cars driving past on our street. And this one guy, he stopped in his car, and he got out and he started chasing us. He was really angry. Loads of cars went past first, so it's kind of inevitable, really. But I turned to my brother, and he's already all the way down the road, right? So this guy's coming to me. So I ran around him and I started running away. He gets in his car, starts chasing me in his car, and I'm like, this guy's crazy. I'm like 10. So I had to run around the back of an old people's home, and there's no way out. And he's bigger than me. He got out of his car, started chasing me on foot. And I'm like, right, the only way is to jump over the fence, you know, and it's like twice my height. So I focused on it, and I just ran straight forward, and I jumped over the fence, you know, not in any like special jump, it's just a normal jump, like stepping over. And, you know, I landed on the other side of the fence, and I thought this guy was going to come and get me, so I ran away. But then I realized, yeah, there's no way he's going to jump the fence, right? And then I started looking at my hands, and they were glowing, like full of light. And I've always wondered what that is, you know, what this light coming out of my hands. And several times since then as well, I've experienced light coming from my body, and I've seen it from other people's bodies too. And like when I gave the spiritual realities workshop before with Philip, you know, I showed that presentation of second gen, of having really bright golden light coming out. So that's really special. Yeah, so as well, I've had these experiences before I met the church and read the principle, and just the principles clarified everything for me. And since I started studying this principle in relation to science as well, then I've learned a lot more. So there's my website as well. So I release these things on my website, so you can read up. Would you get next slide, please? Yeah, thanks. So this is from the principle. I put all the quotes and the links on there, so you can check them out as well. So I'll just read the content. For the physical self to grow in good health, it must have proper nourishment. It must absorb air and sunlight, which are intangible types of nourishment, and must eat and drink food and water, which are tangible types of nourishment. Good or evil in the conduct of the physical self is the main determinant of whether the spirit self becomes good or evil. This is because the physical self provides a certain element which we call the vitality element to the spirit self. In our everyday experience, our mind rejoices when our physical self performs good deeds, but feels anxiety after evil conduct. This is because vitality elements, which can be good or evil according to the deeds of the physical self, are infused into our spirit self. The spirit grows through give and receive action between two types of nourishment: life elements that come from God, and vitality elements that come from the physical self. The spirit self not only receives vitality elements from the physical self, it also returns an element to the physical self, which we call the living spirit element. When people receive grace from a heavenly spirit, they undergo many positive changes in their physical self. They feel infinite joy and new strength welling up in them, which can even drive away illness. Such phenomena occur because the physical self receives living spirit elements from the spirit self. So if we can move on. So here's the physical self. So if you can click it. So we get air and sunlight. These are intangible types of nourishment from our physical environment. Next one, please. And these are tangible types of nourishment. So air and sunlight we get automatically. We don't need to do anything for that. And food and water, we need to go out and get those things. So if we can do the next one. So this is our spirit self. And if we can press the button, living spirit elements, like the principle says, they're ever active within our spirit self. So they're continuously coming to our physical self from our spirit body. And that inspires us to do good. And in return, the vitality elements are being sent from the physical body to the spirit body. And so if you have this good relationship, then this will help you develop. And if you press like spiritually, you'll grow. If you press the next button, please. But if you do evil actions, your physical body will produce evil vitality elements. They will send to your spirit self, and your spirit will become unhealthy, or become dark and heavy, and unable to reciprocate the living spirit elements back to your physical self. So that means not only your spirit self suffers, but your physical self doesn't receive that nutrition from your spirit either. So if you can go to the next one, please. So this is, again, the proper relationship between the mind, the spirit, and the body. If you press the next button, then this shows how a person can develop spiritually by doing good deeds in their life. And a lot of religions or spiritual traditions, or even just conscientious ways of living, can get you to that stage. But then if you relate with God, then this introduces life elements from God. So that's when we relate with God through truth and love. And if you press the next button, then we can see that it actually becomes part of the relationship between our spirit and our body, spirit and a physical self. And that's what makes that relationship absolute. You know, if you don't have the life element from God, then you might be a good person, but you can still become bad. So if you got the next one, please. The spirit can grow only while it abides in the flesh. When the physical mind obeys the spirit mind and the physical self acts according to the good purpose of the spirit mind, the physical self receives living spirit elements from the spirit self and becomes wholesome. In return, the physical self provides good vitality elements to the spirit self, which enable the spirit self to grow properly in the direction of goodness. Because all people have living spirit elements ever active within themselves, even an evil person's original mind inclines toward goodness. However, unless he actually leads a life of goodness, the living spirit elements cannot engage in proper give and receive with the vitality elements, nor can they be infused into his physical self to make it wholesome. And I like this word, infused. So we'll be looking at this infusion, of the elements. Next please. It can be inferred from the above that the spirit self can attain perfection only during a person's earthly life. Humans are created so that once they reach perfection, they will fully breathe the love of God. Those who committed sinful deeds while on earth become crippled spirits who are incapable of fully breathing the love of God. So I know you guys have read this before. I know you're familiar with it. I'm also giving this over the internet as well for people maybe haven't seen it before. But I wanted to go through this anyway to highlight some points that even though this section of the principle is very short, it's very accurate or very the message is very clear. It doesn't say unnecessary things. So what we've learned and what we need to find out. Vitality elements are produced by the physical body. So where in the physical body are vitality elements produced? Is it the lungs, the heart, the brain, particular organ of the body? There should be physiological origin. The state of vitality elements are affected by our physical actions. So what is the process within the physical body that changes the state of the vitality element? The vitality elements are infused into the spirit self. And what is this infusion, and where and how does it occur? Vitality elements carry information about our physical actions to the spirit self. And in what form is this information? So there's many different types of information, like it's digital information, or color is an information, audio information. So proposed mechanism and process of vitality elements being produced and sent. So vitality elements, I propose are biophotons. These are biological photons that are emitted from biological systems. Okay. So production and infusion, I propose epigenetics. I will go into these in more detail through the presentation. So vitality elements, or biophotons, these are quotes from Earthly Life and Spirit World, the dual structure of human beings. When our physical and spiritual selves harmonize and resonate with each other in God's love, the spiritual cells and physical cells interact perfectly. So many speeches I've read, true parents describe this, we have spiritual cells as well as physical cells, right? And they say that the physical and the spiritual bodies are the same, they function the same way. So we can use the physical body as an example of how the spirit body functions, right? Next, please. When we open our eyes and they are working perfectly, we can see everything throughout heaven and earth for the first time. When we use a highly efficient microphone, our voice will ring out fully everywhere. Similarly, once our physical and spiritual selves become one and attain an explosive state through the power of love, that complete union emits a light on the same wavelength as the heavenly world, the earthly world, and even God himself. And so, for me that very clearly describes biophotons, that we emit a light from our body. So we need to find some things within our body as well that correlate to these points. Now, a microphone or an antenna, because a microphone only receives the information, and then it channels it through maybe an amplifier and then a speaker, and you can hear it as well in a different form. So we need like an antenna. So next one we're looking for this explosive state. Next, and it needs to emit light. Next, please. We need to see a circuit as well, giving and receiving. Okay, not just one way. And we're looking for cells. So this phenomenon needs to involve the cells, because we're looking at true parents' words as well, taking that as an example. Next, please. Biophotons are electromagnetic waves in the visible range of the spectrum. In other words, light, emitted from biological systems, including human beings. So you've seen this picture of Jesus, I'm sure. It's an old depiction of Jesus, and it is actually very accurate. That we do emit light such as this, like from our body. Many spiritual people have drawn loads of different pictures about the light being emitted from our body, and you've probably all heard of the aura. That's an actual phenomenon. And it is a measurable phenomenon. There are scientific instruments that do measure these things. This light emission is an expression of the functional state of the living organism, and its measurement therefore can be used to assess the state. And that's important because our spirit grows according to the state of the vitality element, if it's a good vitality element or an evil vitality element. Okay, so vitality elements, yeah. Biophoton emission is biochemically distinct from the more well-known phenomena of bioluminescence. So I just wanted to make that clear. It's not the same as fireflies, for example. So if you want to click the next button. Okay, so that's bioluminescence, but that's different from biophoton emission. So DNA is apparently at least an important source of biophoton emission, since conformational changes induced in the DNA of living cells are clearly reflected by changes of the photon emission of cells. So conformational change basically means the change of the shape of the DNA. So when the shape of the DNA changes, that also affects the emission of biophotons. So there's a measurable relationship there between DNA and its shape and the emission of biophotons. And so there's the fundamental difference between these two phenomena. Next, please. I know it's a lot of information. It's kind of building up, and it's going to piece together. I'm just giving lots of information at the moment. So how are the states of vitality elements affected by our actions? Okay, so I wanted to find an actual process by which the state of vitality elements are affected by our physical actions, right? If the principle is true and it says that happens, then I wanted to find out how that can be possible. So if biophotons are vitality elements and they carry information about the state of the DNA that produces them, we need to see if there is a process by which the state of the DNA is affected by our physical actions. And I believe this process is epigenetics.
So Randy, I see here you have skinny mice and fat mice. What have you done in this lab?
Well, these animals are actually genetically identical.
The fat ones and the skinny one?
That's correct.
Because these are huge.
They're huge.
Can we weigh them to find out?
So if you take, this is...
Looks like they can barely walk.
They can't walk too much. They're not going to be running very far. So that's about 63 grams.
63 grams.
Let's look at the other one.
So it's half the weight.
Right.
This gets even more mysterious when you realize that these identical mice both have a particular gene called agouti. But in a yellow mouse, it stays on all the time, causing obesity. Just look at this. So what accounts for the thin mouse? Exercise? Atkins? No. A tiny chemical tag of carbon and hydrogen, called a methyl group, has affixed to the agouti gene, shutting it down. Living creatures possess millions of tags like these. Some, like methyl groups, attach to genes directly, inhibiting their function. Other types grab the proteins, called histones, around which genes coil, and tighten or loosen them to control gene expression. distinct methylation and histone patterns exist in every cell, constituting a sort of second genome, the epigenome.
Epigenetics literally translates into just meaning above the genome. So if you would think, for example, of the genome as being like a computer, the hardware of a computer, the epigenome would be like the software that tells the computer when to work, how to work, and how much.
Okay, so there are several different ways that the genome is affected epigenetically. The epigenome is basically instructions that are sent to the genome to tell it how to behave, right? If a gene is to be turned on or off, and if it's turned on, how much it's turned on, like the volume switch, basically. So, so if you have a gene for red hair and it's turned on, you have red hair. Then how bright is the red hair? You know, how much is that expressed? So we get these instructions from our environment, so things we eat and drink, the air as well, natural atmosphere, pollutants cause changes. But also internally within the environment of your body, so particular chemicals that are released, hormones and things like that change your body, such as during pregnancy and puberty. You know, your body goes through radical changes because of different instructions sent to your genome.
There's a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is like a little mini factory, and it is a place that assembles certain chemicals that matches certain emotions that we experience. Those particular chemicals are called peptides. They're small chain amino acid sequences. The body's basically a carbon unit that makes about 20 different amino acids all together to formulate its physical structure. The body is a protein-producing machine. In the hypothalamus, we take small chain proteins called peptides, and we assemble them into certain neuropeptides or neurohormones that match the emotional states that we experience on a daily basis. So there's chemicals for anger, and there's chemicals for sadness, and there's chemicals for victimization, there's chemicals for lust. There's a chemical that matches every emotional state that we experience. And the moment that we experience that emotional state in our body or in our brain, that hypothalamus will immediately assemble the peptide that then releases it through the pituitary into the bloodstream. The moment it makes it into the bloodstream, it finds its way to different centers or different parts of the body. Now, every single cell in the body has these receptors on the outside.
And one cell can have thousands of receptors studding its surface, kind of opening up to the outside world. And when a peptide docks on a cell, it literally, like a key going into a lock, sits on the receptor surface and attaches to it and kind of moves the receptor. And it's kind of like a doorbell buzzing, sends a signal into the cell.
It's party time!
So that's one example, a really important and every single second of your life example of epigenetic instruction being sent to your cell, to the DNA in your cell, telling it how to behave, right? Coming from your emotions, right? That's really central. That's what like religions have been teaching us to do for thousands of years, right? Have self-control, right? Control your emotions. When you see someone like, you know, naked or something, you don't just respond to that and just have all these different emotions. You should have control over yourself, right? So, you know, and you know, when you have relationships with people and they do something wrong to you, you don't just hate them. You know, you can stop reactive processes and just choose how to love them instead, right? And you have control, because your physical body literally suffers from negative emotions because it produces those kind of chemicals that give a signal to yourself, to your genome, which affect it according to the emotions you're experiencing, right? And the same for positive emotions, right? Yeah, in what form is this biophotonic information? Okay, so basically, just to clarify this process, by having epigenetic instructions go into your DNA, the DNA is affected, and it affects the state of the biophotons that are being produced by your DNA. So basically, the biophoton is the vitality element, right? So if you're having positive emotions, then you're getting good chemicals going to your cells, and you're changing the state of the information in your biophotons. And therefore, I propose in this presentation, it goes to the spirit self and instructs the spirit body how to develop, how it grows. And I'll go into that process a bit more now. So the photon is a fundamental carrier of information, possessing numerous information carrying degrees of freedom, including frequency, phase, arrival time, polarization, orbital angular momentum, linear momentum, entanglement, etc. And there's loads of different ones. That's from DARPA. Photons are able to encode, in principle, infinite information via the continuous spatiotemporal degrees of freedom. So basically one photon can contain infinite amount of information, right? So it's a huge capacity there. Next, please. People who have realized the purpose of creation. This is a quote from the principle. People who have realized the purpose of creation exist as three-dimensional beings who always lead their lives in spherical relationships centered on God. In relation to this presentation, that reminds me of a photon has a spherical nature. This is how they can attain mastery even over the incorporeal world. When the circular movement of the subject partner and the object partner on a single plane becomes a spherical movement in a three-dimensional orbit, the dynamism and creativity of the universe unfolds. And this is the correlation between the quote from DARPA. Variations in each orbit's distance, shape, state, direction, angle, force and velocity are manifest as the beauty of creation in its infinite variety. Because the universe is composed of electromagnetic waves and we have control over that through our DNA based on the emotions we experience. So there's a huge capacity there for us to have dominion over the creation. And that's another content of another presentation that I'll go into, not now. So what we've learned so far, biophotons or vitality elements are produced by a physical body, very likely the DNA. The state of our DNA is affected by chemicals such as peptides that are released in our body due to the emotions we experience as a result of our actions. The biophotons or vitality elements being emitted contain information corresponding to the state of the DNA when they were emitted. So where does this light and information go? Because it's being produced by our cells, but it doesn't just go nowhere, right? It has to go somewhere. So in appearance, our spirit self matches our physical self. That's from the DP. In the spirit world, we will be able to feel the flow of our blood and the beat of our pulse. It is the same. Though we will have spirit bodies, they will work the same way as our physical bodies. That's from Cheong. So a physical mind, spirit mind, physical body, spirit body, physical senses, spiritual senses, physical organs, spiritual organs, such as your heart, physical cells and spiritual cells, and physical DNA, spiritual DNA is internal, external, Gyeong, Sang, Seong, Sang. Next, please. Oh yeah, physical genes and spiritual genes. So we have physical DNA, spiritual DNA, and next, please. I propose, And so we have the relationship of vitality elements and living spirit elements in the form of biophotons. So how is the spiritual DNA affected by this information? So now we're looking at how the DNA actually becomes good or evil. Okay, so if this information is being sent to your spirit from your physical body based on your actions, then there needs to be a process by which that information is, like I mentioned earlier, infused into your spirit self. Right, because that's what the principle says, right? So what happens to the physical DNA when information is sent to it, for example, in the form of epigenetic instructions? So like I said, we can use the physical body as an example for the spirit body. So we have the two mice that are genetically identical, but due to the different epigenetic instructions that they've received, they have completely different appearance and the function is altered as well. So different instructions cause the genes of the DNA to be expressed differently in the body, resulting in changes of appearance and function in the living organism. Different instructions in the form of good or evil vitality elements cause the spiritual genes of our spiritual DNA to be expressed differently in our spiritual body. resulting in changes of appearance and function in the living organism, our spiritual body. Question. Biophotons or vitality elements are not chemical instructions, they are light. Are there any examples of gene expression being regulated by light? There is. Thanks to a new technology developed at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the Broad Institute, it is now possible to rapidly start or halt the expression of any gene of interest simply by shining light on the cells. This work is based on a technique known as optogenetics. The researchers are able to either stimulate or suppress the expression of a specific target gene almost immediately after the light comes on. So that's just a demonstration that the genes can be turned on or off using light. Okay, next. So here are some examples of True Parents' words just regarding light, just some things I've thrown in at the end just to illustrate there's a lot more from True Parents that relate to this topic. You know, there's just so much I could put into this presentation, and I know, quite a lot already maybe, but there's just so much that I found relating that kind of seems to imply that this is quite true. Love can be said to be light because it illuminates, and so it is the realm of light. The light that illuminates the spirit world is that of true love. All cells are meant to live comfortably, regulated by the ideal of love, which corresponds to light as well. The cells of our body should be the cells of love that connect directly to God. So that's like receiving life elements from God, which is another form of, you could say, spiritual biophotons, but on a higher vibration. In the spirit world, because love is the life element, we carry out all instructions given through love immediately. Nothing is impossible. In the darkness in prison, my handcuffed hands shone when I could not sleep, cramped in the tiny jail cell. Why was there light? God's love and embrace caused my hands to emit light. God's love caused the light. I was awed by God's love, even while being tortured in the basement of the prison. So I like to follow True Parents' example. I've meant to quote here, and I'm going to say this about my presentation. What I'm saying is logical. I assert it based on systematic logic and scientific proof. I'm saying this because I believe it's true, and I'm also open to people testing it and find out more information and kind of developing it, really. And if there's anything that is not true, I'm also willing to accept that, and because I'm just looking for the truth, basically. Okay, next. And this year is UNESCO International Year of Light, which I think is pretty cool. It's appropriate. And next. This is from the quote from their website, Why Light Matters. On the most fundamental level, through photosynthesis, light is necessary to the existence of life itself, and the many applications of light have revolutionized society through medicine, communications, entertainment, and culture. Light and photonics are poised to become key enabling technologies of the future. This presentation is one part of my projects of STARS, the group I made a few years ago with a brother, some other brothers and sisters, called STARS, Sincerity and Truth for the Advancement of Revolutionary Science. So I'll just show some other projects that we have on the next slide, please. So the original lineage and the human fall. What exactly is the original sin physiologically? Like the principle describes, it's a physiological phenomena, so it should be measurable. And how is it removed from the lineage? And I believe I have actually found that, and I will give that content in another presentation. Spirit world, machine or device. What is the actual connection between the physical world and the spirit world, and how can we utilize that to make a device that enables us to communicate with our ancestors in the spirit world? like your parents have talked about spirit world machine in speeches. One of the effects this would have is that it would make religions obsolete. That's the way your parents describe it. When you can communicate directly with the spirit world using technology, you don't need to have a religion. So it kind of would catalyze the restoration process a bit. So we know from the principle that the center of the physical world and the spirit world is the human being, right? But what inside the human being is the center of the spirit world and physical world? Through this presentation, you can probably understand what that is. But I've also believe I've found a way to create this device as well, which hasn't been possible before because there's been certain components that you need to create it that haven't been understood before. Anyway, that's another presentation as well. The ratio of God's dual characteristics. I believe if there are a set of dual characteristics and it's a constant throughout the creation, then there should be a particular ratio to that, which we can understand and apply through science and so on in our relationships as well. And I believe I found that as well. How does the fallen nature manifest physiologically, and how can I remove it? And I also understand that a little bit, or at least one aspect of that. So we'll be going through more of these on my website, and I please ask people to give their feedback and you know, if you want. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, James. If you would like to discuss that with him, I'm sure he'd be happy. Okay, so we'll have our offering song now, Shining Fatherland.
Sunlight beaming forth in the east from the fatherland, bringing tidings of a new world to families in the field. Let us hasten to send the news all throughout the world. Legion's glory spreading forever, the hope of joy and peace. Dawn, golden dawn throughout the shining fatherland, tells the tidings of the rising sun that brings us light. Harvest quickly, men of the fields, hasten to harvest now. Crops are ripened and ready to bring into the heavenly barn. Saints and angels and heavenly hosts gather to